This noise, it's the Goblin rally cry. We're safe for now, so don't be nervous.
Thank you.
How is it out there?
An obelisk suddenly appeared from the ground. It's swarming with Stalkers fighting for the Mana Stone. It's utter chaos.
The sudden appearance of the dungeon, and now the obelisk. I cannot interpret the witch's intentions.
The witch.
Have patience. Apprehension could lead you to death in a place like this.
This darkness will not last long. Urud's child and Knave's friend. We will find them as we cleanse out the darkness.
Who's there?
Wait, someone's injured.
Oh, she was attacked by monsters.
She could be faking her injury to ambush us.
Please, her injury is dire.
Let me help.
Please.
Oh yeah, sign me up. Dungeon Stalker, not to be confused with Dungeon Fighter, or Dungeon Explorer, or Dungeon Alchemist, is a game developed and published by One Universe, who doesn't really have too much under their belt. The only other thing that they've done is a meta character creator called Meta Soulmate, and that did not go over very well for them at all. I went into this thinking that it was going to be a really terrible experience. In fact, I posted in Chip's Discord server that I was 80% sure that this was going to be a bad time. But because of the nature of this game, I was determined to try it out anyway. Dungeon Stalker is a third-person, dungeon-crawling PvPvE extraction game. Hold on, everybody stop, I'm back.
Jingle, jingle, pay attention to the stream. Jingle, jingle, gentlemen, we answering question, we're talking.
I know that that's a collection of buzzwords, especially with all the copycats popping up. But hear me out. Dungeon Stalker took all of the best parts from Dark and Darker and Escape from Tarkov and smashed them together. Then they said, okay, now that we have the foundation for our game, in order to stand out, let's take all of the characters that we know of from these sorts of games and make them ridiculously hot. And it worked. The make or break factor with all of these games doesn't really have much to do with the combat. Die, bitch! And it doesn't have much to do with the weapon customization. Really, what it comes down to is the loot. You see, regardless of if a game is free to play or something that you pay for, if it's an MMO, character action game, first-person shooter, regardless, it's going to have some sort of claim to fast-paced combat, smooth action, something along those lines, and you can pretty much blame Terra for all of that. Terra kicked off that habit, and it's continued. So, for a game to sit there and say, oh, it plays really well, well, obviously it plays really well. Every game is supposed to play really well, especially now. Honestly, yeah. And then you have weapon customization. While, yes, it's very neat to be able to customize different weapons in order to get different effects or, you know, tune them to your specific style of gameplay or whatever. Oftentimes what ends up happening is it overwhelms new players or drives them away because of how complicated the systems are. So enthusiasts will really enjoy that sort of thing, but if you're somebody who just wants to get in and hit some buttons, maybe shoot some people or fight, that sort of system is just a lot of extra clutter, and they feel like it's something that they have to interact with in order to stay competitive or to have any sort of success. No. The real kicker is the loot. The thing that keeps Tarkov on top of its throne is the fact that looting in that game is a phenomenally satisfying experience. Even if you don't actually see any combat, even if you die, the joy of opening up a container and getting a bunch of random crap, only to discover that it's something that you need, or something that you can give to somebody else for something that you do need, is amazing. Dungeon Stalkers gets that right. Now, to be perfectly clear, this isn't just the act of picking up some items and stuffing them into your inventory. No, it's a much deeper system, and it has to be. You see, obviously anybody who plays video games knows that there's going to be NPCs that ask you to bring them specific things, like a fetch quest. But with Escape from Tarkov, not only do you have NPCs that want items, you also have to get items to build up your hideout. This is a space that's connected to your account that you have to develop from basically a disgusting, disheveled pit into something that resembles a living space. And you do that by upgrading different components of your hideout over your playtime. So to start out, for example, in Tarkov, you don't have a bathroom. You have to go find, I believe it's toilet paper and toothpaste or something like that. And the end result is you've got some kitty litter and a bucket. Sounds disgusting, but we all gotta start somewhere. That means that when you're out in your raids and you're searching through things, even the most mundane items can be exciting to get. Whether it's a packet of cigarettes, a motor taken from a vacuum cleaner, or some random filters. All of those are things that you can use to upgrade your hideout. And the more you play and the more you do that, the more your hideout begins to resemble something that you can stay in. It goes from being an abandoned basement into a secret base that you've crafted and customized, upgraded. And the functionality is actually functional. It's not just an aesthetic thing. Eventually, you'll be able to craft your own things, weapons, ammunition, armor, other utilities, medical supplies, and things of that nature. So, what exactly does all of this have to do with Dungeon Stalkers? Well, like I said, this is a blend of Dark and Darker and Escape from Tarkov. In Dungeon Stalkers, you have a hideout as well. and you have to get items from the dungeon in order to upgrade your hideout. Now, I promise that we're almost at the gameplay part, but let me go over the equipment. See, in Dungeon Stalkers, armor does do what you would expect it to do as far as boosting your defensive stats and some other things if they have the attunement or fixes for it. Randomly generated stats like movement speed, damage reduction, magic reduction, that sort of thing. But if you look above the health bar here, there's this little white bar. Your armor works essentially as a shield, and that bar will mitigate some of the damage that you take as it depletes. So as you get hit, that white bar will start to decrease, and once it's fully depleted, that means that your armor is broken and you will be taking damage to your health bar directly. There are still things that can damage you even if you have that bar filled or partially filled. Things such as poison or curse, fire, status ailments. Now, at 100% durability, your character will have their full equipment and set on. At 50%, you'll notice that certain details start to get a little bit tattered. Maybe they'll lose some bits of equipment. And then at 0%, they'll be stripped down to just their basic underclothes because the armor has been completely destroyed. If you have some premium currencies, or some premium outfits, I should say, you'll notice that the effect is represented on all of the available outfits on all of the available characters, including the guys. And as you can imagine, the premium outfits look much better than some of the cheaper, more defaults. And of course, the females have more outfits, but I imagine that as the game gets updated, this will change. What this means is that your equipment is essentially, I won't say disposable, but it's most definitely replaceable. There will be times where you're in the middle of a dungeon crawl and your equipment is broken, and you won't really have too much choice but to swap it out for something that you find. If for no other reason but to give yourself a little bit of extra damage mitigation. Now, I wasn't able to find out if your broken armor still gives you the stat boosts. I'm not really sure about that information, but what I do know is that you don't want to be going around with no armor for long periods of time. If you don't have a choice, then you have to do what you have to do. But if you can take some extra hits, that could be the difference between surviving a fight and not surviving a fight. Now, I should also mention that Dungeon Stalker is up to 3 people. So you could be alone, have a partner, or have a group maxing at 3. So if they find some equipment, you can take it from them and put it on, assuming that it is appropriate for your class. Each character in Dungeon Stalkers is essentially assigned a class, and that means that they can use specific types of equipment. Obviously, your tanks use more plate stuff, and your mages use cloth, similar to stuff like rogues, and archers use leather. There's a little bit of crossover, but not too much. They do definitely feel like distinct classes, each with their own unique abilities and strengths and weaknesses. One of those weaknesses for mages being, of course, them being squishy as all hell. I don't really have any footage of playing this with other people yet, but the elite mobs that will spawn on the map, they are marked by an icon, are definitely points that draw players to them because of their increased loot, of course. They're tougher enemies, they'll drop better loot. But what really, really sets Dungeon Stalker apart from Dark and Darker is, in Dark and Darker, blue portals will, of course, remove you from the dungeon, and they do so here as well. But red portals will take you deeper into the dungeon, and again, there will be harder monsters in general, and better loot. Incredibly harder, I should mention. In Dungeon Stalkers, the red portals will actually take you to what is essentially like a mini raid boss. It is a separate instance where you and your team can fight off against a mini boss and then loot what he drops and what spawns in that room, assuming that you're able to actually defeat it. That sort of thing is most definitely reserved for groups. I was able to defeat some elite monsters outside of the red portals by myself, but they were tough. And they usually left me looking over my shoulder, hoping that I wasn't going to get ambushed. It was still fun, and I'm glad that I did it, but I could definitely tell that this is a game that wants you to be in a group and a party. Which isn't that big of an issue, because this game does have an in-game voice chat, as well as matchmaking for both of its modes, which I will go into detail now. You see, there is a separate PvP mode, or there's a separate PvE mode, in which you don't have to worry about other players attacking you. Now, a lot of people will hear that and think that this game is for casuals, but once you hear how they've actually worked out the mechanics and details, you'll see why this actually impresses me quite a bit. So, like I said, the PvE mode means that other players can't attack you. But that doesn't mean that the other players aren't there. So what usually happens is you'll load in with a bunch of other people at random points in the dungeon, and what it becomes at that point is a scramble to see who can defeat enemies and get loot the fastest. So if I go into a room and I see another player, rather than try to attack them, I need to try and loot whatever I can before they do. Otherwise, I'll just be picking up their leftovers, whatever they don't get. The same thing works for enemies, which can be frustrating if you don't know what's going on. There was an instance where I helped another player defeat a elite mob, and before I could even open up the monster's container to take its items, they had already sucked everything up and were running away to loot another area. So even though the competition isn't direct player versus player, it's still kind of a hostile situation where people are trying to get things of value before anyone else can snatch them up. I should also mention too that in this mode, you don't lose your equipment, but you do lose everything in your inventory, which I think is very, very interesting. I don't think any of the other extraction games have a system like this. It, again, is a very friendly way to get people familiar with the dungeon, the PvE monsters that you have to fight, and just all of the systems that the games have to offer without having to worry too much about losing their gear. Now, the PvP side of things is also split. So, the initial PvP mode that all people will have unlocked will have player versus player encounters in which that you can take items off of their bodies. But you still won't lose your equipment if you die, just the things in your inventory. This is where they have a ranked mode, where it's exactly what you would expect. It's not the terminology that I would have used personally, it's very confusing, but essentially the ranked mode is where you will have the player versus player encounters, as well as the ability to lose your equipment and your inventory items. So, basically, you'll have casual, and you'll have hardcore, and then you'll have PvE and PvP, where one side of things, you're not at risk of losing too much, and the other side, you're at risk of losing everything. Now, how they go about balancing this is, in the casual side of things, there's a limit to what sort of rarity items will drop. If you want to get items that have a higher rarity than blue, then you have to go into the harder core game modes. So, You can't just farm up a bunch of legendary items in a no-risk environment, only to take them over and hope to eliminate a bunch of other players with this free gear that you cheated your way up. It doesn't work like that. And that being said, it also means that in the more casual modes, if you happen to take high rarity loot into the more casual modes, while you won't be at risk of losing that, you also won't be able to bully newer players. The most you'll be able to do is quickly defeat enemies. But at that point, there's not going to be too much in it for you unless you're just doing it to farm materials for your hideout. So, after a certain point in time, it just becomes, you know, whether or not you want to play the game and risk your loot or not. This does a good job of making sure that they don't have to really do wipes the same way that they do in Escape from Tarkov and Dark and Darker. You're not going to have a situation where a new player is going up against somebody who's got death level elite boss gear, and the new player stands no chance. But at the same time, things are still rewarding for people who are new and people who have been playing for a long time. And that's one of the reasons why I think that you should check out Dungeon Stalkers. Some streamers got sponsored to play it. I am not one of them. The game is available for free, is in early access, and available on Steam. Let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all in another video.